So I like to kind of start this talk with framing kind of where we are. So if you think about the future and we try and predict what's going to happen in marketing and content marketing in particular, all we can do as humans is look at what we know, look at the technology that exists, look at our understanding of what's going to happen, and maybe we can project out a little bit into the future. So if you think about yourself standing on the end of this timeline, and this is an illustration from Tim Urban from Wait But Why. Is anybody a Wait But Why reader in the room? Check it out. It's incredible. Tim Urban, he publishes once maybe every 3 to 6 months. He basically just goes deep on topics that literally the wait, but why? Like he's asking these why questions about AI, about rockets, about robotics, about anything that's interesting. So he went deep in a 2-part series on the AI revolution. And so this is an illustration from that blog. Now, related, this is from New Year's Eve, this past New Year's Eve, December 31st, 2017. So this is a Bloomberg journalist, and he tweeted all the things that didn't exist 10 years ago. And so I have a 6-year-old and a 5-year-old. New Year's Eve for me is trying to get them to go to bed at 8:30 and hope I can stay up long enough to see the ball drop. So I'm retweeting Bloomberg journalists on New Year's Eve. But I highlighted a few things here. And again, think about this. What does the next 10 years look like to us? Instagram, Snapchat, iPad, Bitcoin, Alexa, WeChat, Facebook Messenger, Square, Slack. Find My iPhone is my favorite because the iPhone itself was only 6 months old at that point. The whole point being, Steve Jobs himself 10 years prior could not probably have predicted the impact the iPhone would have and the changes that we would have seen. So the reality when we try and look forward and say, where is the industry going to go? What are our careers going to look like? What is the software we use going to look like? We have no idea because it's actually this up and to the right curve is the reality of what the future looks like. So this change velocity is going to be accelerated in ways we can't comprehend by artificial intelligence. And I'll share a couple of things that just happened yesterday in a moment to give you some perspective on this. I think we lost our clip. Oh, here we go. So this is Sundar, who I will talk about it more in a moment. But he's been quoted recently with this electricity and fire analogy. And so this was actually from an interview with Recode. It said, AI is one of the most important things that humanity is working on. It's more profound than, I don't know, electricity or fire. He's since repeated this many times. So for me, as Chris said, I actually own an agency. We do content strategy and production is largely what we do. And so a few years back, I started asking this question of, is AI going to change what we do? I'd actually attended a South by Southwest session with the editor of the Associated Press, the managing editor, and the CEO of a company called Automated Insights that does data-driven content creation. And they told the story of how the Associated Press went from publishing 300 earnings reports a quarter written by humans to 3,000 written by machines, 100% written by machines. At the time, I had no idea what natural language generation really was. I didn't comprehend what was going to happen. But I literally just sat in the audience and said, hold on a second, that's what we do. Like, we write content for a living. Is our machines going to be able to do that for us? And then in particular, we do a lot of blog post content. And so it's like, our machine's going to do this at scale for us. So I'll come back to the answer to that question in a minute. But to set the kind of level set, I know at the end of I caught the end of the day yesterday, and there was some definitions around AI. What you'll find is, if you search for that in Google, what is artificial intelligence? Get 10 AI experts, you will get 10 different definitions. So one of the important things about AI is don't get caught up in the terminology. If you don't understand all the different terms or understand exactly what they are, that's fine. As content marketers, as marketers in general, the key is to understand what AI is capable of doing, to know the right questions to ask. So my favorite definition, largely because of its simplicity, is from Demis Hassabis. He's the founder of DeepMind, which got bought for about $600 million in 2014 by Google. He now runs Google DeepMind. He was a child chess prodigy. He was actually the #2 chess player in the world at the age of 13. And then he since has gone on to build AlphaGo and AlphaZero at Google. If you want your mind to be stretched in terms of what's going to happen, Go on Netflix. There's a documentary called AlphaGo. It's an hour and a half. You'll want to watch it multiple times. Like it'll literally blow your mind what they're building there and what it's capable of. So the science of making machines smart. I like to add, which in turn augments human knowledge and capabilities. That's basically what AI is doing. It is augmenting what we're capable of doing, and at scales we're not capable of as humans. So generally speaking, artificial intelligence is the broad kind of macro level umbrella term that categorizes everything else within it. Machine learning is the most common type of artificial intelligence. It's actually kind of become synonymous with AI, so you'll hear them used almost interchangeably. And then down further would be deep learning. Deep learning is actually trying to teach machines to think like the human mind. So you hear things like neural networks. They're literally trying to understand how the human brain processes things and then give machines that capability. So like computer vision would be something like that, trying to recognize objects. Specifically to content marketing, you'll hear terms like natural language processing and natural language generation. And so again, I'm not going to burden you with a bunch of terms today, but those are common words that you will hear related to AI. So one of the most important elements of this is if you, as a marketer, as a writer, just someone who sends emails or uses Word docs, you're basically writing algorithms. When you give a set of instructions to software, you're telling it what to do. That's basically what an algorithm is. In artificial intelligence, the machines actually develop the ability to get smarter on their own. They learn how to alter instructions, alter rule sets, and adapt content in ways that we wouldn't maybe think to do as humans. So here's a very practical example of how AI could be used. So let's say for this event, the human would go in and say, if someone registers, then add them to the email workflow. And maybe there's a 2 or 3 part email workflow that gives you all the information about the event. However, what if the person who registered is already a customer versus not a customer? They have subscribed to the blog versus they don't subscribe to the blog. Geographically, where are they located? Are they likely to convert would they be interested in the certification program? Are they actually in Germany? Maybe they'd come to the Berlin event next week. There's all of these like what if things that right now the marketer has to think about. You have to map these things and think about them and then decide, does this affect the emails that we would send to this person? These are things that generally just don't happen in marketing because it's almost impossible to think of all the variables and then develop these workflows. This is where machines excel. They take all this data and they can then do predictions based on that data and alter what would happen. So it's just a practical example. This is one of my favorite analogies to understand what AI opens up. So this is from an AI researcher at Google. It says, AI will help us make sense of an increasingly complex and information-intensive world in ways that wouldn't be possible with just our brains, much like telescopes and microscopes help us see the world in ways that wouldn't be possible with just human eyes. That's a really good synopsis of what AI is going to do for us as humans and as content marketers. So what you'll realize is that you're actually using AI dozens, if not hundreds of times every day, and you don't know it's happening. So on Facebook, for years, when you upload photos, it would say, do you want to tag this person? It's like, well, how do they know who that person is? They're using facial recognition software that actually recognizes people's images. About 2 months ago, you probably saw an alert in Facebook if you logged in and said, they're using facial recognition to find you in every photo ever posted on Facebook. Do you want to turn this feature off? So basically, they auto-turned on facial recognition to find you in every photo you've ever been in, even if you weren't tagged in the photo. That's using AI technology. Again, that's just part of your life. If you use your iPhone, literally Google Maps, Siri, like there's so many ways you can use AI within your iPhone, but you don't think, oh, I'm using AI. It just got more convenient. It got more personalized and tells you like, hey, you parked your car here. Or all of a sudden, Apple Maps pops up and says it's 7 minutes to work. It's like, how did you know I'm going to work? Well, it's because you go to work every day at the same time, and it knows that. So those are examples of it. Obviously, when you search Google, RankBrain is Google's AI algorithm that largely now determines what shows up within search results. This is one of my favorite, and this goes back to the quote at the beginning. So this is an example of smart replies. Anybody use the Gmail app on your phone and you see those little 3 to 5 word responses at the bottom? Google, as of 2017, had a team of 35 AI engineers working on smart replies. They were trying to, this was the first thing you would see, but the reality was, and what's very relevant to people in this room, they're trying to figure out how to create human language. And they never intended to stop at 3-word replies. That's why Ray Kurzweil, who's an AI thought leader, and these engineers are all working on this problem. It's a very, very hard problem to create human language. So they started here, and every time you chose one of those, the machine learned. It starts learning its ability to predict what you want to say next. It's reading the email, it's understanding the words within that email, and then it's trying to predict the most accurate response for you. So in this case, do you want to go to this party tonight? Yeah. Yesterday, did anybody see this? What happened at the Google I/O developer conference yesterday? So 2 really interesting things happened. 1, Google Assistant can now speak in, I think it's 10 different voices. And they demonstrated a 45-second call where Google Assistant called a hair salon and scheduled an appointment for someone. The person on the other didn't know they weren't talking to a human. So they've now gotten to the point with voice where they can emulate human voice and have natural conversation. So this is called Smart Compose. This is the next step into Smart Replies. Smart Replies, 3 to 5 words based on the context of the email. Smart Compose writes entire sentences for you in Gmail. So within the next few weeks, your personal Gmail accounts will have this feature available. And if you're a G Suite user, you'll actually have that feature available probably in the next few months. So they're now attempting to actually create human language. I don't know where this is going. Like, this is, again, it's a very hard, I would actually be interested sometime to talk to Andrew about this. Like, again, creating human language is incredibly complex. And the general belief is, from a creative standpoint, it's not something machines will excel at. And I think this is probably largely still a data-driven probabilities of what you want to say. This is not a original, creative, qualitative storytelling. I don't see that being taken over by machines anytime that we can predict. So going back to that question for us of can machines write content at scale, the answer is if it's data-driven and if you give it a template, yes. Like if you want to write earnings reports and publish 3,000 of them, the writer actually almost blends data science and journalism and figures out what the story is and writes all the synonyms and does all the content creation. Then you can put it in the machine and it can spit out iterations of it, but the machine can't come up with the story on its own at this point. So this is as far as I've seen we've gotten with original creation of language by a machine. If you watch Netflix, 75% of what people watch on Netflix comes from an AI recommended algorithm. So they're basically building recommenders that looks at you and people like you and predicts what it thinks you would want to watch based on what you've seen. The Washington Post is owned by Jeff Bezos. When it first happened, I was really trying to figure out what the play was for Jeff Bezos to own a publisher. And now it's, I think, becoming more and more clear. So they're doing some incredible things with natural language generation. They write their high school sports stories, for example, are written by machines. They did Olympics in 2016. They did election coverage in 2016. Again, anything with data, their machines are actually the ones writing those stories. And then human editors do editing and do subject line writing, headline writing. But then they also use it to surface content within the site. So they're using different types of AI algorithms to recommend what you might read based on what you've previously read or people like you have read. And then obviously Amazon, everything on there is all about predicting what you're likely to buy next. And so they're a massive player in the AI space. And then this, I think, is just interesting because it's a very tangible example of that deep learning side. This is how Tesla Autopilot works. So if you look at these colored boxes, a machine, or in this case the car and the machine within the car, it has no idea what a person looks like or what a telephone pole is or what the difference between the two are. The machine's been taught to recognize objects and assign them some sort of variable that tells it what action to take. Now again, no human sitting behind the scenes coding and saying turn left here, turn right there. The machine is learning on its own, and it's actually using a network effect of every Tesla on the road to make the entire network of Tesla cars get smarter. So if one Tesla learns something, all Teslas can learn something. That's a really practical example of how artificial intelligence works and how autonomous vehicles, which will become a huge part. Like I have a 6-year-old daughter, and I've said, I don't know that she'll ever need a driver's license. Like realistically, in 10 years, there's no reason she would ever have to drive a car. And so the future of how we get transported, how we do all these things, is being driven by AI. So the whole point is your life is already machine assisted. Everything you're doing, you're not even realizing it, but things are becoming more personalized, more convenient, more efficient. And a lot of exchange of that is it's privacy. It's what are you willing to give up to have it? Like even after Google's announcements yesterday, there was a great article in The Verge where that's basically what they said, or it was Wired. It's like, these are amazing things. Realize what it is you're giving up to allow these things to happen. And that's why Google and Facebook and Amazon and Apple and IBM, like that's why all these companies can excel. They have the most data. They have the most information that helps them, helps the machines learn and get smarter. So as Chris was saying, we launched this AI Institute in 2016. So I started my agency in 2005. And then we were pretty advanced in the technology space. So we were HubSpot's first partner agency, which they started in 2008 roughly. And so we were always kind of at the forefront of marketing automation. And then in 2011, when IBM Watson won on Jeopardy, I became fascinated with technology. And I didn't understand how Watson actually worked, but I became obsessed with figuring it out. And so I just started reading things like Automate This by Christopher Steiner is a great entry-level read if you're trying to see the potential where this is going. But in 2016, I realized I still don't actually understand the space. Now we have all these vendors slapping AI in their names or claiming that their products are using artificial intelligence. And I'm like, I don't know if they actually are. And so we just decided, well, let's start researching and writing about it. And that's what the Institute became. It's really just been a content hub. So we've published probably 150 or so articles. And as part of that strategy, we've been doing spotlights on AI-powered companies in the marketing and content marketing space. This was actually the main impetus of the market research. We ask the same 8 questions of every vendor. Like, how are you using AI? What are its use cases? What's its limitations? What's its potential? We're trying to understand through the lens of these developers and through the entrepreneurs how they see the AI space. So we've done 38 spotlights. Combined, they have about $850 million in funding, and you can see kind of the top 10 in terms of funding that we know of, and this is through Crunchbase data. But like Drift just raised, I think, 60 million. Uberflip's not on here, but they just raised 32 million. Like you have these companies getting massive amounts of venture funding to push forward in AI because it's actually pretty dumb. Like in a lot of cases, the AI used by these startups, unlike Acrolinks, which actually been doing this for 15 years and wasn't calling it AI, they were just doing insanely smart things but not terming it that way. A lot of these companies are coming into the space and trying to tackle these narrow use cases because there's no such thing as an AI platform. You can't have one AI that just does everything. You have to build it to do discrete, specific tasks like image recognition or recommending content. And so you have companies being built around these individual narrow use cases. So combined, we're tracking about 750 companies in this space. About half of them have venture funding for a total of close to $4 billion. So there's lots of money going in. So the space you see right now, when you're trying to figure out tools to use to enhance what you're doing, it's only going to get more complex. So the big question we always get is, well, how do you get started? So I'm going to walk you through what we call the 5 Ps of AI, and then we'll wrap up with 3 quick tips on how to start. So again, when we were trying to figure out this space, I needed a framework to understand it. So instead of looking at 750 companies and trying to figure out each of them individually, we tried to kind of categorize them. So starting with the planning phase, and I'm going to show you like specific use cases. So analyzing existing content. There's actually a lot of players in this space. So a lot of these startups and content marketing software are enabling you to do this. So I could probably tell you 10 companies that do this specific use case, but Concurred would be an example here. And I'll make these slides available. I'll pass them through Acrolinks so if anybody wants to go back and look at these, because I'm going to move pretty quickly through them. Capturing competitive intelligence. There's a company called Cran, one of the early employees at HubSpot founded this company. And what this does is enable you to monitor the digital footprint of your competitors, or really any domain, online and offline, any changes they make, executive changes, changes to their pricing page, changes to landing pages, and then it actually creates narratives that tells it to you. Not only does it give you access to the data, it writes the reports for you and tells you when things change. Similar, Pathmatics is a company out of, I think they're out of Santa Monica. They're actually a client of ours. So they enable you to do monitoring of digital ad spend, and they'll actually surface the creative for you, tell you when the creative changes, they'll show it to you within your dashboard, tell you how much they spent, how many impressions they created, and what networks they went through to buy the ads. So at scale, almost impossible. This is like, it's filling a gap where there probably wasn't even anyone on your team that would have been able to do this. It's creating a new capability that's enhancing our knowledge and capabilities. Keywords and topic clusters. Again, another one. I know later today, Jeff at MarketMuse is going to be talking about this kind of topic, and MarketMuse does enable this one. But this is kind of the new SEO, and so when you're creating content, you're looking at ways to enhance it, not just keyword volume, but in relation to things you've previously written and the probability of future content being able to perform. And then, again, with Jeff being up here later, I thought I'd pull one of their examples of mapping content to the buyer journey. So again, like, it's not that humans are incapable of doing this, it's just a really time-intensive task that requires you to process a lot of data to do it right. So a lot of content marketers just don't do it. It's like instinctual. And so you're basically not optimizing content strategy because you're not using everything that's available to you. So tools like Acrolinks and MarketMuse enable you to actually do things at a scale you wouldn't have done before. Production, and this is one, and it's not actually because we're at an Acrolinks conference, but I always show Acrolinks as the example here, because this, to me, is an incredible, tangible application of AI, to be able to create content at scale across languages, across geographic markets, and to be able to have it not only do sentiment and tone, which a lot of tools probably do that, but to be able to do it to your brand guidelines, and to be able to scale what would take maybe dozens of editors in some organizations and still not be as good as what the machine enables you to do. So this isn't replacing jobs per se, it's enriching what you're able to do as an organization and as a team, which is really what AI is designed for. The creating data-driven content, again, this is questionable whether this is even AI. To be honest, it's not AI in this case. The human is actually doing the heavy lifting. Now, AI might be used to surface what data to write about. Like, it can inform the process, but natural language generation can definitely be a piece of it. Curating content, if people use a tool like Scoopit or Curata, where you can surface information and then create a summary of it for your site. Tagging images is a really good practical application. So this is a company called Clarify. And I don't know if you can make this out, but what they've done is they've trained some existing models. So you could start off with their apparel model. And what that means is they've already written algorithms, or the machine has devised algorithms to recognize apparel. And in this example, it's showing the photo of the woman in the turtleneck, and it's saying it's a 97% probability that this is a turtleneck. It's a 37% probability it's a tube top. Again, the machine doesn't know what a shirt is. It's been trained to recognize a shirt and then figure out the probability that it's the kind of shirt that's shown in the photo. And then writing email subject lines is another really practical one. So there's a company called Phrasey, and they claim that machine-written email subject lines outperform humans 98% of the time. Now, in their case, they need about 100,000 emails to learn from to be able to properly write the emails. But this technology is now being used to do ads, like digital ads, Facebook ads. It can be used in AdWords, and it can potentially be used to write emails, pieces of emails as well. Personalization, a lot of money's gone into this space, so things like conversation marketing, as Drift would call it, where the bot is actually initiating the conversation. I referenced that there was a couple of things that happened at the Google. This would be an example that I never even thought of when I created this, of the Google Assistant being able to make that phone call and talk to somebody. Like, that's a pure AI play, not available to the average marketer, but that kind of thing can come into play. And in Drift, like, it can surface content you've written and recommend it. Email send time optimization. If you send out a newsletter, a lot of content marketers, are the ones that own the newsletter. If you send the newsletter out at 2 p.m. on a Thursday because some report 2 years ago said that's the best time to send newsletters, what if half of your subscriber base is in Europe? Like that doesn't make any sense. And so in this case, what they enable to do is optimize at the individual level. Like it may actually learn that I open my emails on Saturday nights at 10 p.m. and it may hold all of my emails from that company until Saturday night at 10 p.m. and then send them to me. So if you have 1,000 subscribers or 100,000 subscribers, that's the kind of thing that, again, up until now, humans just set a rule that says send this email at this time, and maybe you segmented your list a little bit. This enables you to segment at an individual level. And then personalizing individual experiences. So like Salesforce has bought, I think it's at least 9 companies in the AI space, and then kind of bundled them together into Einstein and created a layer over their core CRM product. And Einstein has all kinds of capabilities like individualized experiences. And then a really practical one for content marketers is right now, again, if someone read one ebook or read one post, I would need to go in and write a rule that says if they looked at this one, then show them this one next, or send them this email. Tools like Uberflip will do that for you. It'll actually figure out what to surface for people and recommend that right within the site. And then promotion, Albert, so what they do is digital ad spend. So if you spend, say, $20,000 a month on buying digital ads, normally you would have to go through media buyers to place the ads or use programmatic. They'll actually, all you have to do is tell them, we'll spend $1,000 a day, here's the creative, and here's variations, and Albert mixes and matches the creative on its own, figures out the optimal creative to present, and then adjusts the budget by channel based on performance. So I saw a demo where they had like 30,000 changes to the ad program over 30 days that Albert did that otherwise wouldn't have happened. A/B testing of content and landing pages and offers and buttons. So this to me is a really practical example. Like if you have a video on your site and you're trying to decide whether the play button should be green or blue, just not something a human should be solving for. So like machines can figure that out and eventually maybe customize the color of the button to the individual. Optimizing across channel, so content on your own site, remarketing content, and content on new sites that have, based on predictions, look like people that would likely buy from you, so it can surface your content there. And then this is a really tangible one, and I don't know if this one actually works, honestly, but what they're trying to do is highly interesting. So if you're going to write a social media update, you often have to figure out what image to include, what hashtag to use, what the right words to include are, and then when to publish it. This tool promises to do all of those things for you. Now, it'll surface the hashtags, it'll recommend colors based on performance, and then it'll adjust the send date based on the channel you're sending through and who maybe you're targeting. That's the kind of thing that's really, really hard for humans. Like we're never going to optimally do that, but machines can. And then the last section is performance. This one's raw. There aren't very many good tools here. Now, specific to content, being able to predict performance is a really interesting one. But in terms of your overall performance, so Pave AI is a company that's been trying to do this. And what they'll do is take your Google Analytics data and try and surface insights and recommendations based on it. But it's a really, really complex problem. There's a lot of noise that the machine would surface. And so it's going to take a while for this to be really effective. Another example would be GrowthBot, which Dharmesh Shah, one of the co-founders of HubSpot, built kind of on the side, and now they're integrating into the platform. Being able to ask questions through a bot, through Facebook Messenger, through your phone, say, how was performance this month? What was our top content in the last 30 days? What was our top content in Europe? And it to be able to provide responses to you. And Google Analytics has invested a lot in this area where they're trying to actually let you just ask questions and query instead of having to go through a bunch of charts and graphs. So with all that being said, how do you actually get started? The way I look at it is you look at the things you do every day that you're actually responsible for. If you have a team of people, the things your team does every day. Look at the things that are manual and repetitive, and ideally things that require data, either to make the decisions or to create and produce. Look at those things and assume that there is AI that can help you do it more efficiently, and start looking for solutions there. Again, I could tell you 700 AI-powered companies. There may be 5 that might actually be relevant to your organization, and this is a good place to start. The second is looking at that data. I was at a conference recently, and somebody said there was 99% of data within organizations is dark data, like not even being used. And I don't know that it's that high, but we all have access to data that could be informing what we write about, what our strategies are, and it's probably not being used optimally. So really looking at that data, or working with a data scientist to figure out what else do we have access to and how could we be using it. And then the third, and maybe the most important one, is to start with your core tech stack. Like, look at the tools you're already using, like in Acrolinx. Say, what else could we be doing? So some of these providers are just baking it right in. They're literally AI powered. Everything they're doing is AI immersed into it. A lot of the bigger companies, though, they're just dabbling in AI. So they have content marketing software, content strategy software, and they say it's AI, but in reality, there's like one little piece, and it's kind of in beta, and they don't have any case studies to prove it works, but yeah, we have AI. But you want to kind of talk to those core companies and find out if there's ways to just use that software more intelligently. So what comes next? The other question besides how do we get started is, am I not going to have a job? One time a guy asked this, and I said, you don't want to be a telemarketer, and he was a telemarketer. And that was a really awkward 5 minutes on stage. I just cited a University of Oxford study. He's like, are we going to be out of jobs? And I was like, well, University of Oxford looked at 702 professions and did probabilities of intelligent automation. And I can just tell you, like, you don't want to be a telemarketer. And his face just drops. And he stares at me. He's like, I'm a telemarketer. Like, do I not have a job? And I'm like, oh my God. So yeah, I hope there's no telemarketers in the room. The future of marketing, as far as anyone can see, and anyone tells you otherwise doesn't, is making stuff up. It's marketer and machine. It's finding ways to enhance what we're doing and what we're capable of doing by using machines to intelligently automate tasks. In some ways, things we were already doing, and in some places, things we weren't even thinking of doing yet. So it's largely going to enhance your knowledge and capabilities. And for the people that actually take the initiative to ask the right questions, to look into the right tools, you can create a competitive advantage for your company and within your own career. And the thing I'll leave you with is start at that single use case level. Look at those things that you do all the time that require a massive amount of time, create it in a spreadsheet and put a column for frequency, like daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, annual. Like, how often do you do this thing? How many hours does it take? How much money does it take? And then prioritize your activities based on that, and then go looking. Go find 1 or 2 tools that can just help you do that one thing more efficiently. So thank you for the time, and unfortunately I have to leave on a flight to Boston after this. I have to be in Boston tonight, but if anybody has any questions or wants to follow up, I'm happy to have conversations. Like I said, I'll get the slide deck to Acrolinx so they can provide it to you as well. So thank you.